time today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about suburban survival and preparedness. Basically, and today we have a guest, Chris from Ammo.com.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
And,
it's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, happy to have you. But yeah, it turns out, everybody wants to be in the country and do the whole, off grid cows, pigs, and chickens. But turns out that's not always feasible. Turns out making money and taking care of business sometimes, ends up taking priority. So you got to, find a way to adapt. And there are definitely things you can do in the suburbs that could definitely change the outcome and maybe make you from a victim to a survivor. So anyway, Chris, what are your thoughts?
No, yeah, like I said, first off, thanks for having me. And I feel like this is a topic that is somewhat criminally under discussed in the prepping community because, like you said, Chuck, at the beginning, everybody's like, okay, you got to go, you got to get your chickens, you got to get your property, your 20 acres out in the sticks, right? And just some people don't have that disposable income. I know I don't, just to pick up, uproot everything and just go. So I wanted to talk about suburban prepping today because, and I have a quote from this, according to data from the HUD and the census collected in 2017, apparently 52% of people identify their living situation as being in suburban landscape, essentially. So that basically says to me the majority of Americans live in the suburbs. And I think that's only going to increase after everything that happened in 2020. People are starting to flock to this type of living situation because most people are working remote now. So we're getting more and more people in the suburbs. And I don't want people to feel like they're going to be left out. Like you can't survive in the suburbs because you definitely can. And there are some advantages around it that some people might not have thought of.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, and that's the thing, to ignore such a huge part of the, prepping community and be like, well, you guys are on your own. You got to get a bug out bag and get gone. Honestly, I mean, that's a good plan if you can pull it off and you have somewhere to go. But that's, again, a lot of times, I mean, if we have a cyber attack or something like that and the lights go out, I'm going to drive 50 miles out to the country may not be a good play. It depends how well you see things coming and how well prepared you really are. But it's very practical and realistic to kind of find a way to hunker down and figure out your own survival. You're responsible for your family and you need to find a way to do it.
A lot of these
we actually
a lot of these events that people think about happening, we always think about like doomsday, the end of the world, but the truth is a lot of these things, 3 or 4 days, a big blizzard or power failures or a hurricane, it's really a matter of a week or so before you can get things back together again, and taking off for the country and fighting traffic to get across the bridge and over here and down there. It's not really realistic in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, weather definitely is something you need to keep an eye on. We just had a tornado here in central Indiana where I live just a couple weeks ago, knocked power out for about 8 hours. And I mean, literally, I heard the freight train, right? When the winds were coming, the tornado literally dissipated about 100 yards south of my house. It was nuts. So these things happen, and being prepared really can help you weather that storm, literally and metaphorically, and, thrive instead of just survive.
All right, well, let's kind of like jump right into the meat of it. So what can I do? Where would I even start? When I'm prepping, I live in the suburbs. I'm in a maybe small neighborhood, whatever, surrounded by many other small neighborhoods. What are my go-to things? I mean, I assume I want to stockpile some stuff. I can't really grow food to any significant level. People do have gardens in their,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends how suburban it
Right.
is. You might have the acre yard that's almost getting, a little more country than whatever, but it's, I know when I used to live in Virginia Beach and everything, even fancy houses, everybody had like a tenth of an acre. It
Yep.
was all like nothing. And you were still 10 feet away from the house next door.
Hmm.
So again,
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, that's kind of the situation I'm in now. I have like no land, on my house. I'm right next to my neighbors, but there are a lot of advantages that you might not have thought of living in the suburbs. And of course, the big one is you have a lot of people around you. And I know that as preppers, we're like, oh no, we got to get out in, low population density. We don't want to have people around us. But the truth is, you're going to need a community to survive any long-term disaster. Kind of like what Kevin was talking about, like the doomsday scenarios like the EMP, the cyber attack, nuclear war, take your pick. You're going to need a community, but even for those small disasters, having that community around you can really save your behind if things go bad. So that's one major benefit of living in the suburbs is you have an established community around you of people that identify of living in your neighborhood. I live in Beverly Hills, or not, that's probably a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. You all have this commonality between you, and that can be somewhat as a unifying force. How are we going to get through this together? Kind of like what you were talking, Chuck, you're going to need some supplies ahead of time. But the beautiful part is in a suburban setting, you have a lot more storage than you would in, say, like an urban setting, right? If you live in an apartment, it's going to be tough. It's not impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder because you can't stockpile as much shelf stable foods like, rice, beans, all your classic stuff that you throw in Mylar bags, or even just canned food, which is going to taste a little bit better to start off with. But also, one thing that I've noticed is, living in the suburbs, there's often a high density of people who enjoy, well, let's just say their personal protection items. I don't want to get slapped by the YouTube algorithm here, but well, let's just say that they have things that you can use to protect yourself with, and a lot of people have that. And to go along with that, you've got a lot of people who have different tools and supplies and things like that that maybe you could share with. If you need to borrow a
right.
drill for 10 minutes, you can go to Bob next door, and be like, hey, bro, can I borrow your drill for a second? And he can help you out, and then maybe later on you can help him out with something, and it's a mutually beneficial situation. I think that's a really great benefit to being in the suburbs. And oftentimes, and this is probably one of my big ones, usually there's water nearby. Usually you have like retention ponds, streams, pools, things like that, depending on your neighborhood. I know we've got like 2 retention ponds here. It's not going to be the highest quality water, and obviously you're going to have to do a lot to purify and sterilize that water, but at least you have it and you don't have to hike 3 miles to the nearest water source. And you'll quickly discover the benefits of having water nearby when you have to do that because it's heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. I think, prepping your house, so having, the food stockpile, having the stuff, loaded up in the closets under some beds,
Exactly.
some extra food storage wherever. But again, like you said, not as stressful as when you're in the city or something, trying to have it in a 500 square foot apartment versus maybe a 1200 to 2000 square foot house. It's a little bit
Oh
different.
yeah.
Um, but storing water or having, like you said, the water source, the thing is to find out where you can get it,
Yep.
to have a plan beforehand and to make the accommodations, that you're going to need to. And honestly, they always talk in the country about, oh, well, we can, pound down a well, Barry, have a little hand pump thing and whatever. And people do it and whatever. Maybe you can figure that out in your neighborhood, set somebody up in their backyard if, you do your own little well thing.
Yeah, it's a
And,
really good point.
I know like where Kevin is, people used to have wells. And so there's a lot of, where you might have the backup
Mhm.
and you can figure out the option. Now he's on municipal water, but he still has, a well that he can, utilize in his house, and having a plan for that, having somebody, come up with that. I think one of the big things though is, you touched on it, is that mutual assistance kind of community thing. We just did an episode not that far back on mutual assistance groups. It is it's important anywhere, but it's so much more important when you're in close quarters and you are going to be kind of dependent on each other. Um, having good fences, buying maybe the 3M security film for your windows, for your big glass slider door, or things where, hey, nobody can just kind of crash in on my house. That would help things a lot. But having people around you, being able to kind of close off your street, 5 houses up and back or whatever, because you've talked to these people, you've made the connections, would be even better. If you can say, hey, look, let's, take turns so we all don't have to sit in our living room paranoid with a shotgun and looking out the window all night long because people are rioting, and burning down the Walmart up the road. That's the idea is when you're in a group, you can, utilize so much more, and that's huge. And, in a way you want to do that in the country, but obviously if the next house is a half mile up the road, that really doesn't help you when, so that is a benefit to being there. I also know it's nice if you can see them coming from a half mile away too,
True.
instead of, oh, they just cleared the corner into our cul-de-sac, so it's always kind of a gamble.
Yeah, I mean, there's always pluses and minuses to every situation. And I'm not saying that, living in the suburbs is the end all be all best place to be, but I want people to feel like they have some advantages. And like you talked about, community is huge. Having that is so important. And if you don't have that, that can be really to your detriment. And like you mentioned, yeah, if Joe Bob lives half a mile away from your house, sure, you can see him coming from that half mile away, but you need to go borrow that drill like we were talking about, or, in the country, maybe you need to borrow some type of farm implement. It's quite a bit longer of a journey as opposed to me just stepping out the front porch and just being, hey, John, what are you doing this afternoon? Can we do something like that? But like I said, there are some disadvantages to living in the suburbs too. Let's be honest, there are a lot of unprepared people in the world these days. And my hope coming on this show and, being on with this community is to get more preppers out there, get more people prepared. And there will also be people who are not pro Second Amendment, let's just say it, living on where you are. And depending on what location you live, there may be more of those than people who do like it. So that's something you got to think about.
Right.
You're going to have to deal with different opinions, different people saying, no, we should do this. No, we should do this. So there is that. And you may have, a lot of kids or, folks with disabilities that you're going to have to really help out. That could be an issue. And then probably the biggest issue is a lot of suburbs live on what we refer to as natural lines of drift, AKA the interstates. And when things go, if it really goes bad, and like you're talking about, they're rioting and burning down the Walmart, when the major cities clear out, where they're coming to next. They're going to be spreading out in the suburbs. But since you have that community around you, you have a better chance of being able to deal with that.
I think definitely.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
know in my experience, getting to know neighbors in different areas that I've lived, like you said, there's a lot of people that may not be pro Second Amendment. A lot of people might think you're crazy, the things you do, but a lot of the times I run into neighbors that, wow, you're out of your mind, just like I am. You're a crazy person too. We're gonna be friends, man. I didn't realize that that you have a whole arsenal in your bedroom. That's and you run into people that that really also kind of fit in with your ideas and the things that you're interested in, and it's good to know which person's which before you're in trouble, right?
Oh, definitely. And I have a way that you can do that I think honestly, even people who don't like going out and talking to people can do. And I want to share my experience with this. This is something that I had somewhat of a revelation on a couple months ago. I have a German Shepherd. She loves to walk, so I walk her 3 times a day. And I know a lot of people are just probably clicked off the video right now, but please hear me out on this. There are a lot of benefits to that, not alone just talking about, your health, getting out there, getting some exercise. Also, you're going to learn how well your shoes hold up to mileage. I'll tell you that right now. And I have discovered that a lot of shoes don't hold up as well as you think they might, which could be some good intel for you for a disaster, having some good footwear. but I can tell you pretty much everybody in my neighborhood who, like you said, is as crazy as I am, or maybe thinks I'm crazy, because you learn a lot from just walking around your neighborhood, waving to people, maybe saying hi every once in a while. But what I found out was it was Halloween last year. I was taking my then 10-year-old out. We were going house to house, and everybody we went to was like, "Hey, where's your dog?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, everybody in my neighborhood knows who I am because of walking the dog." And so, in a disaster scenario, whether it be large or small, if you've done that work ahead of time, people know who you are. And if they're going to be, whether you're the German Shepherd guy or the Shih Tzu guy or the guy who just likes to walk every night, uh, they're going to know you. And when things go south, you could be like, "Hey, let's meet up at the park, and let's talk about what's going on and how we want to handle this." Because I heard from my crank radio that they're rioting downtown, and they're talking about maybe coming this way. We need to organize and figure out what we're going to do.
Mhm.
At least people know who you are, and you're not just some unknown person in the crowd. And I think that's a really easy way that has a lot of benefits that can really get you in that community more and be part of it without having to do a lot and just go like, hey John, you ready for the apocalypse, bro?" And then they're like, "What is wrong with you?" You don't have to have that awkward conversation. You can just be the guy who walks the dog. And that's a really good way to just kind of interject yourself into that community. There are other ways you can do it too, whether you want to be part of your HOA. Don't get me started on that. Um, setting up like a Facebook group for your community. And if it doesn't
Yeah.
exist, you make it, and then you get to be the admin.
Right. There you go. Then you can delete everybody else.
Exactly, that you don't like,
You have
right?
no friends. But that's the thing, like you said, a Facebook group or something like that. Having your phone, the phone numbers of your neighbors, or some way to get in touch with, even if two or three, they probably know some of the others. You'll find a way to tap in. But by getting out and getting more involved in the community, it's funny. I lived, by Kevin, and we had it was reasonably suburban area. And now that I'm out in the country, I actually know more people than I think I did, in New York. I had like maybe the 5 neighbors around me, and then after that, it's like, I have no idea.
Mhm.
And now, like, the wife, I just started getting more involved, like looking at it as the prepper kind of standpoint. I go and now, I live in a nothing town. My town is like square 2 miles, and I live outside of that.
Oh, you're living the
And
dream, bro.
oh, dude, it's like there's like 250 people in the town, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we're nothing." We move in, you shift the whole balance. And it was good actually, because I moved down south and they hate Yankees down here, it turns out. And but the lady who owned the property where I'm at before me, everybody in the community hated her so much that when she moved, they're like, "Oh, you finally got rid of that lady. We love you, because no matter what, you're better than
That she
what we
was.
had going here before."
Yeah.
Yeah. And but you get involved, and I think joining, maybe the fire department, or like I said, I don't do that. I connected with the wife, does the farmers markets and all that, and I meet everybody. And now I'll go down and hang out with the mayor and whatever, and we talk about nothing. And he's some 80-year-old guy and whatever, and we just hang out, and it's all good in the world. It's funny, we started connecting, and he was looking for like growing the town. And that's what a mayor should
Of
do,
course.
is make things better, right? He's like, "Oh, we can bring municipal water, and we can bring sewer, and all these things. It's so exciting. We can bring Wi-Fi towers to the thing." And I'm like, slow down. I'm like, think about what you're saying. And it was funny, because I was like, you're really talking about bringing a huge development right in the middle of the town. And I'm like, think of what that's going to do to your taxes.
Yeah.
Think of what it's going to change. And he was like, kind of, blew me off and was like, "Oh yeah, you're crazy, whatever." And then he started looking at the numbers and what people were demanding. And he was like, "We don't want any of this." And I'm like, "Yeah, now you're getting it." Like, now you understand. But the point is, if you connect and get to know people in your community, you see what's going on, whether it's, your school board, it's your, different things. you can affect the change that's coming, or at least have a voice in it.
Exactly.
And so few people do get involved that if you do, your voice matters. It's always the people who worry about everything and are, just want to control things that end up having the say because they get involved. And if you can kind of bring some sanity to, whatever it is, that might really help the outcome. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is, maybe like you said, not everybody's pro 2A, and some people are just kind of indifferent and haven't thought about it. But when the rioting mob is at the town, a block over, their opinions might change. It might not if you enjoyed your freedoms as much as I do. It might not be bad to have extra that you could kind of supply a little bit. I don't
Do a
know.
little sharing.
Just saying that might be an
Mhm.
option. You might want to cover the community a little bit.
It never hurts to have a little extra hanging around. I want to give you guys one thing. If you guys are looking to, stock up on ammo, if you haven't heard of ammo.com, give us a shot. I have a coupon code for you guys. If you just go to ammo.com/Chris, that's my name. Would love to have you guys check that out. Free $20 off coupon for everybody. All we need is an email to send it to. We're not going to spam you or send your email address out to anybody. So if you guys would like to check that out, feel free. You don't have to. I don't get anything personally from that. I'm not getting like kickbacks or anything. So I just wanted that to be perfectly clear. So if you don't go, it's totally cool. But yeah, having some extra stuff around is a really good thing to do. And I'm not going to say that I do or I don't have, some other extra, implements of peace, as they say in the prepping community these days, hanging about. But yeah, maybe that's something that I thought of, and definitely, hey, if you like that sort of thing, is a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
There you go. No, you said it's ammo.com/Chris.
Yeah, /Chris.
Or it's a promo code,
Mhm.
Chris /Chris.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, I mean, everybody likes ammo, so
Right? Who
I don't
doesn't?
think that we could go wrong with something like that. But being stockpiled and prepared, I'm just saying, it turns out people never realize how fast you can go through ammunition,
Oh yeah.
especially if I don't know. I always watch these videos. Now, mind you, me and Kevin were both in the military. However, neither one of us was like in like major firefights or something, out doing whatever. I watch these videos and these guys are like, yeah, I was just going through magazines and they were stacking up and you have no idea. So, and those are trained guys. So I would say I would want to err on the side of caution
Better to
with
have too
having
much
extra
than not
ammo.
enough.
There you go. And so often you get people who I do know when I go shoot with people who have never done it before, they will burn through
Oh
ammo
yeah.
like nothing. They're just so if you are, working with a community, you can expect that they might burn through some ammo. I know to me, once you kind of get what you're doing, I feel like you could use a lot less, but I don't know. Like I said, I've never been in the big firefight with 100 people or whatever, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, more ammo always sounds like the right answer. And I do know for sure that training and shooting beforehand and learning how to hit your target, and that comes with practice.
So critical.
And practice requires ammo.
Yep.
So I would not, deviate from that.
One tip.
Now, what
One
else?
tip I'll give you for helping
Yeah, go ahead.
conserve ammo at the range that I found is only loading your mags up to 10 rounds. Even if you have like, let's say we're rocking a Glock 17 and we got 17 rounds available, loading that magazine just to 10 kind of really helps slow you down. And especially if you're teaching somebody new who might be a little anxious on the trigger, let's just say that, can really
Yeah.
kind of help slow them down too and not deplete your ammo as fast.
Right. I mean, there's obviously exceptions and I might train something different or different times, but I know when I'm out shooting, even, stuff that I have ammo cans full of, I always like bring the gun down and bring it back up
Mhm.
between every shot.
Good way.
So I have to re-aim because just holding it, aimed at something. Yeah, I can hit the target 50 times, but I'm already there.
Exactly.
It's, I want to, it's how fast can I acquire the target is really what I look for when I'm training. That was actually one of the big pushes. Well, being in New York, the taxes were probably number one to get me out of
Yeah.
there. I was paying 12,000 a year in school and property
Gosh,
taxes.
that's insane,
So you
bro.
pay off your house and it's $1,000 a month when it's paid off. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. I don't need that.
Yeah, for sure.
And dude, that was 12,000 a month on like a $250,000 house. We're not talking, oh,
Right.
well, he lived in a mansion and
Mhm.
that's why.
Yeah, and
No,
a $250,000 house in New York is
Yeah.
not is not
Nothing,
any
bro.
right.
big-
Well, it was that a few years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it ain't
You
that
know what I
now.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. But that was the thing. And then when they came after the guns and were like, oh, you can't have any AR-15s, you can't have any of this and all their good, issues. And I was like, man, I can now I think I pay $1,200 a year, so a tenth for my property taxes. And I went from 2 acres to 14 acres. And I have, a shooting range on the property. But it's because I chose to live in the middle of nowhere. Now, I mean, it all comes at a cost.
Of course.
I have to, the cost, I mean, is like I have to drive 35 minutes to get to work. If I want to go to Lowe's, it's probably 40 minutes. It's, things I go grocery shopping once a month because I don't want to make the trip. I'm always, the wife's like, oh, we have to go to the little town, which is smaller than the town that I left in New York. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to the big city. It's too much for me. But the point is, you get to, you build the life that you want. That's the answer there. But anyway, so now gardening, what are your options in the suburbs? What are you doing there?
So I think that before anything goes down, right, it's kind of difficult because you can't really turn your entire backyard into a garden. Now, I've seen some people do that, and more power to them if that's what you want to do. But for the most part, some communities are going to frown on that. And what I would suggest is start making just like maybe like a raised bed in your backyard. The wife and I just did that. It's a great way to kind of get your feet wet in the gardening game. So at least you have some semblance of idea of what you're doing later. But also, while you're walking the dog, just casually look in people's backyards and see if they've got a garden going on. You'd be like, oh, that guy there knows what he's talking about. Or, she's
Right.
got an amazing garden. If things go down, I'm going to go talk to her. And this is why I think that it's so important to have those stockpiles, since you have that extra storage in your house or, wherever you're living in the suburbs. It can get you through that period that, maybe you're not going to be able to grow food immediately. What if something happens in the middle of the winter, right? We always like to think that disaster is going to happen in the spring or the summer.
Plant a garden. Right.
And you
right.
can like, oh, I'm going to get those seeds in the ground. And we're going to be eating, like kings by fall. But what if it happens in the dead of winter and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground?
Right.
You got to have something to get you through. And then what I think, if it's a prolonged disaster, you're going to have to start talking to people. Be like, hey, Mary over there, you have this amazing garden. What have you been doing? Because I think we're going to need to start growing a lot more.
Right.
And so that would be a great way to get organized and just be like, again, when you pull everybody together, be like, hey, Mary knows what she's talking about with gardening. Let's everybody start setting some things up because this looks like it's going to last a lot longer than we think. And we need to start growing food. Otherwise, we're going to have people who are going hungry. And that's the last thing we want.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe having somewhat of a stockpile of seeds.
Oh, great idea.
They always they have those bags of, for $30 or something. You can have the, 15,000 seeds or whatever. No, mind you, they're all the tiny specks and nothing for, whatever. It might not be what you want, but the idea is to stockpile a decent amount of seeds. And you might have in the community the vacant lot or the one guy with the big yard or the park at the, at the corner or whatever. There might be options that you guys can go to where it might not be your 10 by 10 backyard, but you might have, a big area where the community can kind of go together. And when everybody puts it all together, it makes it a lot more defensible.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of trying to keep an eye on everybody's backyard at the same time, if we can keep an eye on the one lot with the food plot and kind of have a little rotation or something of keeping an eye, again, it depends on the world, that comes, how bad it is on what you need to do. But having a plan for a community garden, And we always talk about, so many people think they can plant a garden at the last
Oh
minute.
no.
And and it's not even the growing, it seems to take like 2 or 3 seasons to learn how to grow things well.
Yep.
Right.
And that's, you were talking about, oh, Mary grows things really well. Well, that's exactly it. Is go to somebody who's been doing it,
Mhm.
because they know what kind of predators you have, whether it's chipmunks or, whatever, certain flies or different things that destroy your garden. They know how to combat that, or what to plant next to what, and what works in your area. Um, where I live, we have, like clay everywhere,
Mhm.
and trying to garden and plant. I mean, that's one of the big things. I kind of got the shooting range, and the wife got to have like a big flower farm. And so she does her thing, and we grow like half vegetables, half flowers, and she sells, her flowers at the farmer's market and all that. But it's learning to farm that way is very different. And it's weird because people on the other side of town all have sand, and it's, well, what do you do, what do I do, and trying to work it out, and trying to find somebody who has soil like we do, and what kind of things you can do to kind of, bring it to life. Talking to your community and learning these things beforehand makes such a difference, and you're able to, really develop the skills that are relevant to your area. um Another thing you had mentioned, having the different types of people in a community makes such a difference. So finding out who is an EMT or a paramedic or something, or who, has whatever skills, whoever, maybe that guy's a cop and he knows about organizing security and things. Maybe it's not you that knows, the things. Maybe it's the guy up the street,
Yeah.
and you find a way to tap into everybody else's skills. And honestly, like you said, having these people on your side is definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
But a little, yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, yeah, you're absolutely on point there, and I think that's another benefit of having a large community around you is that you have such a diverse skill set. Kind of like I was alluding to, somebody may be a great gardener. Maybe you've got LEOs or military personnel in your community. You've got people who are in the medical field, teaching. All different types of skills out there that can really be beneficial in a situation that you could really use that in. And so I would say the best thing to do in that type of situation is have a little humility. I know as preppers, we like to think that, we know everything, we've got it all figured out, but
Yeah.
sometimes we might not. And, if you've got somebody who's been in the military before and has some of that training, maybe default to them. Be like, oh, hey, how are we going to handle this?
Yeah.
What's the best way to secure this? You may have your own idea, but maybe they have something better that can really save your bacon.
Right. No, definitely. And that's the thing. I mean, I think a lot of people struggle, um, delegating kind of,
Yeah.
different things. I see it at my job or whatever, even like when I was in the military as a electronic technician guy, but I fix things, and I had such a hard time. I'm like, oh, well, this is broken and it's so important we get it fixed, that I couldn't kind of let anybody else do it. I'm like, I got to get it up because I know I can do it and get it right. And even now, like, I struggle, and it like takes all I have to just be like, all right, I'm going to stand here. You guys go get started and whatever. But learning to deal and work with other people. And that's a big part of, the whole reaching out now beforehand is, a lot of preppers, I hate to say it, become isolated and want to be their own guy and handle everything. And so much more if you're in a community, do you need to learn to rely on each other and to, work with each other. And like you said, utilize other people's skills, because, maybe, the person who works at the law office, that's not a skill people think would apply to the apocalypse, and rightfully so, but they might be the great organizer. They might be the guy who can put things together and say, look, I can manage, I can write up the schedules and figure out the best ways that everybody can get sleep and do whatever, but we can still keep an eye at the end of the road, and, that kind of thing. There's ways to utilize other people's skills, and being able to recognize skills in other people, I think, is so important, or maybe the guy who can do that is, the guy you want to tap for that, who can, hey, but this guy's really good at getting people. And, so many people are like, you have to do this, you have to do that. And people are like, oh, I don't like your authority. Who are you? There are also people who are able to, get people to work and be happy about it, able to inspire, so maybe that's, you're people like Bill Clinton or something, right? Who can go out and get everybody like, yeah, let's do it. But I don't know, just a thought.
I think, in a situation like that, just having a plan kind of puts you in that
Yeah.
position. Getting your plan put together now, and maybe the community doesn't decide to go with your plan of action, but at least you have a plan of action that you can present, and people will see that and they'd be like, yeah, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe we won't do it his way this time, but at least he has an idea, and that can really help. And that's something that you can do right now. You don't have to out yourself as a prepper community. You just kind of put a little
Yeah.
binder together, and maybe just have like a map of the community in there and be like, okay, these are some areas that could be problem points. Maybe we look at making sure that this road is watched all the time, just in case things start going south.
Yeah. No, I've definitely go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a there's a big benefit in having that sort of community, like you're talking about, and it's not just different skill sets and different things like that. I remember right as the big pandemic started getting crazy a couple of years ago. They started shutting everything down. Everybody was panicking. There was nothing at the grocery store. It was real easy to go over to your neighbor's house and I'm short on sugar. How are you on pasta? Can we do a little bit of trading? And a little bit of that simple bartering could really, really help you out in a bad situation. I remember Chuck was loaded up on toilet paper, and I just made fun of him the whole time as mice are going to eat all that toilet paper. You're never going to use it. Why are you spending all this time and all this space stocking up on toilet paper? Meanwhile, a year later, I'm in the backyard with the garden hose trying to wash my butt crack out, and Chuck's living like in the lap of luxury with all this great toilet
With
paper.
the Charmin.
But I mean, it's
Yep.
it's that sort of stuff. You can't plan for every single eventuality,
Yeah.
and having a community and having people around you that are also somewhat like-minded can really
Yeah.
be a big benefit.
No, it really can. And yeah, just kind of a funny story, kind of like what you're talking about during the pandemic. I
Yeah.
went over to my friend's house to play cards one night, and the guy was like, "All right, guys, we're playing for high stakes tonight." And he puts like a pack of toilet paper in the middle of the table. It was
He's
we all
got it
loved
all,
it. It
huh?
was great. But yeah, and that's a really great point, is just being able to help each other out in a situation like that, especially
Yeah.
with something maybe like water. I mean, obviously as preppers, we think about water a lot because water's life, right? And maybe your neighbor doesn't know how to purify water. And you can go on one hand, oh yeah, that's one less person I got to deal with, right? But on the other hand, you could be like, let me help this person. So that, because waterborne diseases are freaking everywhere. And
Yeah.
especially when, the you know, modern luxuries, let's just say, of water purification stop working, uh, cholera is huge, especially in disaster zones. You've got crypto, you've got E. coli, you've got all different types of bugs that you don't want playing a party in your intestinal tract. And if you could save somebody from that, that's somebody else who could
Yeah.
help you down the line when you're in a hard spot too.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know that is a big issue. It's great that you can turn on your tap and get clean water, hot water. You can flush your toilet, and all your waste just goes away. It's magically disappeared.
Magic.
But when that stops happening, and God knows what your neighbors are doing. Are they pooping right next to the stream? Or are they just peeing in there?
Right.
You don't know what sort of situation you might end up in. And maybe that stream that runs past your house is perfectly clean to drink out of. It's beautiful. And
Hey.
but maybe 2 days into the pandemic with toilets not flushing, that's not going to be the case anymore. And
Mhm.
I think as preppers, like you said, we kind of think about water quite a bit, but not everybody in your community is going to think the same way, and that might make things a lot worse real fast.
And it's so cheap right now just to get like a couple boxes of pool shock. Great way to make
Yeah.
your bleach at
Yeah.
home. And I'll say this, I would much rather drink sterilized water with a little bit of sediment in it that wasn't necessarily filtered, but I knew that everything was dead in there. So it may
Yeah.
not taste the best, and of course, drinking a lot of chlorine is not going to be good for your digestive system either. But yeah, neither of those bugs that are growing in there.
Better than
Yeah.
bugs, right? And that's like I know I used to when I was in New York, that was one of the things I worried about, and I would buy, they had, I'd go to the local pool place and they'd have the concentrated bleach and you could buy, again, this is 10 years ago, so I'm sure the world is different, but you could buy the 5-gallon container and it would be like $13 or
Oh
something,
yeah.
reasonable. Kevin, you going to correct me on
No,
that?
no,
You have
that's right.
different,
That's right.
numbers. Yeah. Okay. No, I just felt like I wasn't sure. Now you'd be like, well, that's $50 now because, who
Probably in
knows what
today's
the
money,
world's
you're right.
changed.
Hmm.
Right. That's but even so, like I live in the country. I have 2 wells. I have different things. It's good. But not that either one is the most amazing thing. I come home to water not working sometimes and different things. It's the world. Like I said, you choose the life that you get. And I have a different set of problems. But that's one that, I shouldn't have to worry about. And I still have like 6 gallons of bleach, set aside in a dark space, because you don't know.
Mhm.
You don't know what's gonna, change in the world and how you might be able to help people. And so often, like you said, people have that mindset. I feel like throughout society, people have that mindset of, well, if other people are succeeding, that's taking away from mine.
Yep.
And it's that whole, a rising tide lifts all boats. If you can make your neighbors where they can protect their houses, it's so much less likely that people are going to get past them and to you. And, we all help each other, and if people have a supply of stuff, one, they're not trying to break into your house and take your things. And it's just having everybody prepared and having people able to work together can make such a difference. And definitely reaching out to your community beforehand, it just builds such a good relationship with everybody, to establish that beforehand that, people are going to trust you, people are going to respect your ideas, and people are going to look out for you. And that's a big thing, having people, have your back where they're, looking out for your goals too. So,
Yeah, one thing that might be, some value, again, now while we're in a relatively peaceful time, if your neighborhood doesn't have like a neighborhood watch or something like that, you can reach out to your local PD. I know that we did that here. They had an officer come out and give like a whole talk about it, and that does a couple things. One, it tells you who's interested in making sure the community is safe and ready to go. So it gives you some ideas to who might be a good person to go to, in a disaster scenario. And another thing is it gives you a little bit of a relationship with your local police department, and you can just pull that officer aside afterwards, like, hey, what are you guys seeing out there lately? Is there anything happening downtown that we need to be aware about? Is there like some gang activity going on in this area? Like, what have you guys been seeing lately? And that could be some really good intel to give you some heads up about what you might have to deal with later.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's smart. I know. I know that a lot of people hesitate or shy away from getting involved with community watches, with police departments. They worry about this and that. But the fact of the matter is, it's really important to be involved with your community, especially people that are involved with law enforcement. Just because you don't know what's going on in your neighborhood, you don't always know what's happening. Um, I feel like I live on a very safe street, and the guy down the police came to my house a couple of weeks ago, asked me if I had cameras or whatever. The guy down the street had been had his house broken into, and just because I know my community, I didn't know what's going on. That guy had his house broken into because he's selling drugs. It's not.
Oh gosh.
This isn't somebody just
right.
going around house to house breaking into houses. They knew what house that they were after, and they went
Mhm.
there specifically. And just having an idea of what's going on in your neighborhood can really give you a big advantage when it comes to real life, dangerous situations in your community.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I want to address one quick question here in the chat from Uncle
Uh-oh.
Whiskey. He asked if boiling water, chlorinated water, would make it off gas any faster. It will definitely help. Another thing you can do is you can do what we call aeration, which is basically taking it from one cup and pouring it into another, and then back and forth multiple times. That'll help release some of that chlorine out of there, so it doesn't taste as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. If you're worried about the chlorine taste, like you said, if you let it do its thing, the chlorine needs to be in there doing its thing for about 10 minutes, and then you pretty much should be good. But letting that gallon sit overnight or 2 days, that it's going to be so much more palatable after it's had a little bit of time. But again, you do what you have to do. Because the sun definitely, gets rid of it over time.
Oh, yeah.
So
For sure. That's why you got to keep adding it to your pool.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All those sunny days, they just
Oh, yeah.
eats up that chlorine. You enjoy swimming in it, but it can get expensive. But I mean, it
That's
is,
it.
pools are one of those things you think of as really being a luxury, but in a bad situation, having an extra 15,000 gallons of water,
It's big.
I'm
That helps,
just being able to wash your
especially for
hands, the amount of
toilets or
water you
whatever and
use,
washing.
washing yourself, let alone drinking. If you're in a real bad situation and you're drinking, say a liter a day, and you can go through water pretty fast, especially if you're buying jugs and putting them in your closet. But when it comes to washing your hands or washing your face or brushing your teeth or flushing your toilet, you can go through water real fast. And it's nice to have access to water, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be clean water for things like flushing your toilets and washing your hands. But having access to water is really a big deal, and a lot of suburban areas have a lot of pools, like you had mentioned earlier, and it's a valid point. It's a good point.
Yeah. So now that's definitely a lot to think about. Put it on the list. So you guys have questions, concerns, things you want to talk about, you can email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. We did I just updated our Patreon page, and
Nice.
thought we'd kind of bring that back. We haven't really talked about Patreon in probably a couple of years, and we set up some cool stuff. I have it so that if you do $10 a month, you get a free coffee mug. And we used to have this prepping badass mug that actually I have one. Prepping badass mug, and on the back it's the don't give them an inch. And so anyway, the or you can get the survival and basic badass mug that I don't have in front of me. But $20 a month gets you a t-shirt. And now here's the kicker. Now I'm not rich enough for this, but if you were rich, $50 a month, we're going to set up a camping trip and you'll get to go out to it.
That
Now,
sounds
mind
cool.
you still have to get yourself there.
You mean
But
the airfare
you
isn't
get
included?
yourself there, we'll feed you, and we'll provide the place and the entertainment. Kevin will have fun stories. So that's maybe something you want to look into. But that's patreon.com/preppingbadass. The other thing that all those things get you is we're going to start recording like an after show after the podcast where we kind of, talk about some details and things like that. And we're going to put that exclusively up on the Patreon page. So anybody at any level would get that. We already do have some guys who subscribe at the $10 a month level. If you shoot us an email at preppingbadass@gmail.com, I'd be happy to send you a mug. Let me know which one you want, and confirm your address, and we'd be happy to work that out for you. Otherwise, I would say thanks a lot for listening to the podcast. Chris, thanks for coming out. And
Thanks for having me.
Chris, was there anything
having
else
time
you
with
wanted to mention again?
No, I think we're
go to ammo.com.
no, yeah. If you guys want to check us out on ammo.com, would really appreciate it. As far as suburban prepping, I think just having a positive mindset, doing some of this work ahead of time, and it doesn't have to be hard. Like I said, you don't have to organize community barbecues. You don't have to have that awkward conversation. Just put yourself out there, be part of the community, go to community cleanup stuff and things like that. And at least you have that group around you ahead of time. I think that's the most important thing is community. So start building that community today, and it can definitely pay dividends in the future if anything happens.
All right. So with that, Chris, again, thanks. And all right. So with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.